You know that feeling when something big happens and you just want to cut through the noise and understand it?
Yeah, without getting overwhelmed by like a million different takes.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into Operation Sindoor. That's India's recent military action, the one everyone's been talking about.
And it wasn't just routine. This
Yeah.
was specific. Happened pre-dawn, May 7th, 2025. A very targeted response to terror.
And that name, Operation Sindoor, it stood out immediately, didn't it? Not your usual tactical name.
No, definitely not. It feels significant, symbolic even.
So what's the story there? What are we actually looking at?
Well, looking at the news reports, official statements, sort of piecing together what we can, the symbolism seems key.
Right. So our mission today is to get into the events, sure, but also the why, the reasoning, the potential fallout, really unpack it.
Let's start with the spark then. What actually set this off?
It goes back to that horrific attack in Pahalgam, April 22nd, 2025.
Uh-huh. Bison Meadow. Usually packed with tourists, right? A beautiful spot.
Yeah, and then just horror. 26 people killed.
25 Indian tourists and the Nepali pony guide as well, I believe.
And the report said they were targeted based on religion, which is just chilling.
It is. And that brutality, that specific targeting, it seemed to be the trigger. It connects directly to the pledge Prime Minister Modi made right after.
But this isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? There's a history here.
Oh, absolutely. Pakistan's use of cross-border terrorism as a strategy.
Yeah.
Sadly, that's a long-standing issue.
We saw something similar after Pulwama in 2019, right? With the Balakot airstrikes.
Exactly. Balakot was India's response then, but Operation Sindoor, this feels different. It feels like an escalation.
How so? Deeper strikes.
Much deeper, not just across the border, but into Pakistan's Punjab province, and hitting what India calls the nerve centers of groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed, JEM, and Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lati.
So aiming for the core infrastructure, not just launch pads.
That seems to be the strategic shift, yes.
Yeah.
Actively trying to degrade their capability, hitting them where it hurts operationally.
Okay, let's picture the operation itself. What do we know about May 7th in those early hours?
Well, from what's been released, it sounds like a very coordinated effort. Indian Air Force, Army units, missile systems, all working together.
Kicked off at 1:05 a.m., apparently.
Precisely. And it was fast, over in about 25 minutes.
Wow, 25 minutes. That suggests extreme precision, good intelligence.
Both, likely. High degree of planning. They hit multiple sites. Bahawalpur, Muridke, Muzaffarabad, Kotli, Sialkot.
And the key point India made was that these were terror camps, not Pakistani military bases.
Crucial distinction they emphasized. Terrorist infrastructure was the stated target, trying to show restraint, avoid hitting the Pakistani state directly.
Yeah, some of these places have a notorious past, right? Bahawalpur and Muridke.
Exactly. Bahawalpur, JEM headquarters, Masood Azhar's base, essentially, and Muridke, the Leti Nerve Center, home to that huge Markaz-Taiba training complex. These aren't just minor camps, they're significant hubs, places linked to major past attacks.
What about the official statements from India afterwards? How did they frame it?
Very carefully. You had Colonel Sophia Kresaria and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh leading the briefing.
Right, I remember seeing that.
And their language was specific. Measured, non-escalatory, proportionate, and responsible. Repeating those words.
Trying to manage perceptions, limit escalation?
Themes like it, framing it as a necessary targeted counter-terror action, not the start of a war.
Huh.
And then the Army's ex-post was much more blunt. Justice is served, Jai Hind.
Mission accomplished.
Pretty much.
What about the tech involved? Any clues there? 25 minutes, deep strikes? That takes capability.
Well, the official term used was niche technology weapons, which sounds...
Super smart missiles, precision-guided stuff.
That's the implication, yes. Advanced guidance systems. And then you had foreign outlets like CNN speculating about Rafale jets using Scalpy cruise missiles.
Which would fit that profile of deep, precise strikes.
It would. Suggest a high level of technological capability was deployed.
And the human cost on the other side. The intelligence estimates.
Indian intelligence estimates put the number of terrorists neutralized at over 90.
Over 90. That indicates these camps were pretty substantial operations.
Definitely. And remember, reports suggested some of these same camps were where figures like Ajmal Kasab from the Mumbai attacks and David Headley trained years ago.
Wow. So hitting facilities with a long history in the terror network.
Exactly. Disrupting that pipeline, potentially.
Okay, let's loop back to the name, Operation Sindoor.
It's just so unusual for this kind of thing.
It really is. Sindoor, the vermilion powder. It's deeply symbolic in Indian culture.
For married women, right,
Right.
symbolizing marriage, commitment.
Love, commitment, but also protection, safeguarding the family, the husband's well-being. It carries huge cultural weight.
So linking that to a military strike,
Yeah.
what's the connection?
The reports suggest Prime Minister Modi himself chose the name, and the reason given was as a tribute
A tribute to whom?
to the women widowed in that Pahalgam attack, connecting the military response directly back to the human cost of the initial terror act.
That's powerful. It adds a really personal, emotional layer to it. It does. It moves it beyond just strategy and tactics. It frames it as an act of, well, protection and justice for those who suffered.
So the name itself becomes part of the message, a statement of intent.
Absolutely. A very bold statement, using something deeply personal and sacred.
How did that play out inside India? What was the reaction on the ground?
Overwhelmingly positive from what we saw. A real sense of national pride, support.
You saw figures like Sachin Tendulkar, Viswanathan and lots of prominent people voicing support.
Yeah, from sports, entertainment, and politically too, which was interesting. You had leaders from different parties, Rajnath Singh, Rahul Gandhi, even Asaduddin Owaisi, largely backing the action. A rare moment of unity on this.
That's quite something. And for the families affected by Pahalgam,
Reports quoted some, like Rajesh Narwal, who lost his son. He expressed, a sense of relief, maybe closure, and hope that this would actually deter future attacks.
understandable, a desire for justice, for safety.
Exactly. That seemed to be the core feeling.
Okay, now flip the coin. Pakistan's reaction. Predictably different, I imagine.
Very different. They immediately claimed civilian deaths, 31 people, they said, and also claimed they shot down Indian planes.
Did India respond to that claim about planes?
Not directly, no. They sort of let that hang. Pakistan's defense minister, Khawaja Asif, called it an act of war.
Strong words.
But then he also said they wanted to avoid a bigger war. So, bit of a mixed message there. Anger, but maybe also caution.
And did they retaliate militarily?
Almost immediately, there was cross-border shelling into the Poonch sector in Jammu and Kashmir.
Casualties.
Tragically, yes. 11 civilians were killed, including 5 Sikhs. Reports said a Gurdwara was damaged too.
So immediate escalation on the ground.
Yes, and that led to shut down schools, airports, colleges, and J&K closed down. Major disruption.
How did the rest of the world react? The big players.
It was varied. The U.S. under President Trump at the time called the situation a shame, urged everyone to stop.
Standard call for de-escalation.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
China called it regrettable, urged restraint, also fairly standard for them. The U.K. offered to mediate.
Anyone else? Regional powers.
UAE, Singapore. They issued travel advisories for the region. And the UN did its usual thing, a call for dialogue and peace. Pretty vague.
What about the global media coverage? How did they see it?
Just different angles. The New York Times called it a major escalation, but they also noted India apparently gave the U.S. a heads up beforehand.
Ah, interesting. Trying to manage the fallout internationally?
Seems likely. CNN focused more on the weapons, the technology India might have used.
Right, the Rafales and Scalp missiles, maybe?
Yeah. Al Jazeera questioned the significance of the targets, whether they were really that important. But the general sort of consensus, if there was one, seemed to be that India acted strongly, but maybe strategically tried to keep it contained.
Shashi Tharoor made a point about that, didn't he? That the calls for restraint actually suited India?
He did. His view was that if India intended this as a one-off strike, then global pressure to de-escalate actually worked in India's favor. Let them make their point and then step back.
So, looking bigger picture, Operation Sindoor wasn't just a standalone reaction. It feels like part of something broader from India.
I think you have to see it that way, yes.
Yeah.
It fits into a larger strategy aimed at, well, dismantling Pakistan's terror infrastructure, or at least raising the cost significantly.
We saw other moves after Pahalgam too, didn't we, before the strikes?
Yes, absolutely. Punitive measures. Suspending talks under the Indus Waters Treaty.
Closing the Atari border crossing for trade.
Canceling visas for Pakistanis, downgrading diplomatic ties. It was a multi-pronged pressure campaign.
So the strikes were the military component of that wider strategy.
Exactly. And hitting deep into Punjab, not just Poke like Balakot, sends a much stronger message directly to the Pakistani establishment, the military, the ISI.
India's messaging has been consistent on this too, zero tolerance for terror.
External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has been very clear, very vocal about that on the global stage. But, the risks are always there. Pakistan is a nuclear power.
And the influence of the deep state, the military ISI nexus, that's
Yeah.
always a factor.
Absolutely. Outlets like The Hindu published warnings about that, the potential for unpredictable responses, the need for India to be prepared for escalation.
And it looked like India was preparing, beefing up security.
Seems so. Reports mentioned increased security along the border, especially sensitive areas like Uttarakhand. Mock civil defense drills happening in various districts.
Even Air India offering free rescheduling for soldiers. Little things that show a state of alertness.
Right. All indicators of heightened preparedness, taking the possibility of fallout seriously.
One thing that really struck me visually was that press briefing. Two women officers leading it.
That was significant, wasn't it? Colonel Sophia Qureshi from the Army, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh from the Air Force, alongside the Foreign Secretary.
It sent a powerful message, just the optics of it.
Absolutely. And their statements were strong, too. Colonel Qureshi calling the strikes justice for Pahalgam's victims,
Grounding it in that initial tragedy.
and Wing Commander Singh warning Pakistan against any misadventures. A clear deterrent message.
It also showcased India's military as, well, modern and inclusive.
Yes, having women officers fronting such a major announcement, it challenges stereotypes and presents a very capable, forward-looking image of the armed forces.
So where does this leave things now? Looking ahead, it feels tense.
It does. India sent its message. Pakistan retaliated with shelling. The potential for more action is there.
What are the possible paths forward?
Well, India has stated, through Home Minister Amit Shah, that any further escalation from Pakistan will get a befitting reply. So, readiness for further military action seems to be the stance.
But could there be a de-escalation?
Possibly. If Pakistan steps back, maybe under international pressure, India might leverage that. But relying on the international community to solve the core issue, that seems unlikely.
Yeah, the UN statements, offers to mediate, they rarely dismantle terror factories, do they?
Exactly. Condemnations are one thing. Concrete action that forces Pakistan to fundamentally change its strategy is another. China's role, U.S. interests, it's complex.
So it comes back to India needing to manage this threat primarily on its own.
That seems to be the underlying reality. And Operation Sindoor demonstrates a clear willingness to act decisively when they feel it's necessary.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive.
All right. First, Operation Sindoor was a direct kinetic response to the Pahalgam attack, cause and effect.
Second, it was a calculated, precise strike aimed at specific terror infrastructure deep inside Pakistan, signifying an escalation from past actions.
Third, the whole operation, from the symbolic name Sindoor to the women officers leading the briefing, was designed to send a powerful message about India's resolve and its values.
But as we've said, the situation isn't static, it's still unfolding.
Absolutely. The long-term impact, how this shifts regional dynamics, that remains to be seen. It warrants continued attention.
Definitely. Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe for you, the listener, to consider. Given all these complexities, the history, the potential for escalation, the geopolitics, what factors do you think will be most crucial in shaping the lasting legacy of Operation Sindoor? How will it ultimately affect regional stability and the fight against terrorism down the line? Something to mull over.
A big question for sure. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.